Welcome to this deep dive. And we're going to be exploring something that could be a real game changer when it comes to cancer treatment. It's a drug called Tesnatilimab. And we've got some really fascinating research here. We'll be focusing on, how it works, where it's showing promise, and even this concept of biosimilars, down the road. So by the end of this deep dive, you might just walk away with a whole new understanding of how we might fight cancer in the future.
It really is a fascinating area of research. Immunotherapy, particularly this approach of leveraging the body's own defenses, really has the potential to revolutionize oncology.
Okay, so let's dive right in. I've got this Assay Genie article here, and it looks like tesnatilimab is a monoclonal antibody that goes after this thing called CD47. Now, I know antibodies are kind of like guided missiles, but what's so special about this CD47?
Well, what's really intriguing about CD47 is its role in that intricate dance between cancer cells and the immune system. You see, cancer cells, in their quest for survival, have developed this cunning tactic of using CD47 as a don't eat me signal to evade detection and destruction by the immune system's macrophages.
Macrophages. Those are the cells that go around gobbling up anything that doesn't belong,
Right.
kind of like the body's cleanup crew.
Exactly. Macrophages are absolutely essential for maintaining a healthy immune system. They're constantly patrolling, engulfing, and destroying pathogens, cellular debris, and even precancerous cells.
So these clever cancer cells are essentially waving this don't eat me flag, and the macrophages just fall for it.
Precisely. And that's where tesnatilimab comes in. It's designed to bind specifically to CD47, effectively blocking that don't eat me signal.
So it's like tezatilimab is removing the cancer cell's disguise and finally allowing the macrophages to see them for what they really are.
Yeah.
Dangerous invaders.
Exactly. By blocking CD47, tesnatilimab essentially gives the immune system's macrophages the green light to recognize and attack these cancer cells, essentially restoring that natural balance of immune surveillance.
That's pretty ingenious. But doesn't stopping at the macrophage level seem a bit well limited? I mean, the immune system is a complex beast, right?
You're absolutely right. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't stop there. Engaging the macrophages is just the first step. Imagine this. As those macrophages engulf and destroy the cancer cells, they release bits and pieces of those cells, effectively presenting them to other components of the immune system.
So it's like a chain reaction. Taking out those initial cancer cells triggers a whole cascade of immune responses.
Precisely. This process activates what we call the adaptive immune system, the part of the immune system that learns and remembers specific threats. It's like giving the immune system a crash course in recognizing and targeting these rogue cells, building a long-term memory that allows for more effective targeted responses in the future.
So it's not just about removing that initial don't eat me signal. It's about training the entire immune system to be on high alert, ready to take down any cancer cells that dare to reappear.
You got it. It's like turning the body into a finely tuned cancer-fighting machine, using its own natural defenses to eliminate the threat.
This is some next level stuff. So where is all this leading us? What kinds of cancers are we talking about here? Are we seeing any promising results yet?
That's where things get even more interesting. We'll be diving into those specific clinical applications and digging into the research in just a bit.
All right, you've got me on the edge of my seat. Before we get into the specifics, though, there's one more thing that caught my eye in the research. This whole concept of biosimilars seems like it could have a massive impact on how accessible this treatment could become.
It's definitely a crucial aspect of this conversation, and one that has, far-reaching implications for the future of cancer treatment. But first, let's unpack those clinical applications and see where tesnatilimab is showing real promise.
Sounds good to me. Let's get into it.
Tesnatilimab is showing promise in a surprisingly wide range of cancers, both in the blood and solid tumors. Let's start with the hematologic malignancies. These are the cancers that affect blood cells, bone marrow, and the lymphatic system.
So we're talking leukemia, lymphoma, and conditions like that. I know these could be some of the toughest cancers to treat. What makes tesnatilimab particularly effective against them?
You're right, these are some of the most challenging cancers to treat. But what's fascinating is that many of these cancers, particularly acute myeloid leukemia, AML, and myelodysplastic syndromes, MDS, often have a high expression of CD47.
So it's almost like they're waving that don't eat me flag even more vigorously, making them prime targets for tesnatilimab.
Exactly. And the research is bearing this out. Clinical trials have shown that tesnatilimab can induce remissions in some patients with AML and MDS. What's even more promising is that it's showing efficacy in patients who have relapsed after previous treatments, offering a potential lifeline for those who have exhausted other options.
That's incredible. So there's real hope for patients who might have thought they'd run out of options. But what about side effects? Any red flags there?
Of course, like any cancer treatment, there are potential side effects. Researchers are actively studying the long-term effects and working to manage any adverse reactions. It's important to remember that this is still a relatively new treatment, and ongoing research will provide a clearer picture of its safety profile.
Right, it's a balancing act, weighing the potential benefits against any risks. But the initial findings seem very encouraging.
Indeed, and it's not just blood cancers where tesnatilimab is making waves. Research is also exploring its potential in solid tumors, and the early results are quite promising.
Okay, yeah, we're talking.
Yeah.
Solid tumors, those are the big ones, right? Like breast cancer, lung cancer, colon cancer, cancers that affect organs and tissues. These are some of the most common and often the deadliest cancers out there.
Absolutely. And while the research is still in its early stages, tesnatilimab is demonstrating potential in tackling some of these formidable foes. Studies are currently underway to evaluate its effectiveness against a range of solid tumors, including ovarian, colorectal, and lung cancers.
That's a pretty diverse range of cancers. What makes tesnatilimab a potential contender against these solid tumors? Is it the same CD47 mechanism at play?
Yes, the underlying mechanism remains the same. It turns out that many solid tumors, just like those blood cancers we discussed, also overexpress CD47, making them susceptible to tesnatilimab's immune-boosting effects.
So in a way, it's not just about directly attacking the cancer cells themselves. It's more about empowering the immune system to do its job better, to recognize and eliminate those rogue cells that it might have otherwise missed.
That's a great way to put it. Tesnatilimab essentially acts as a facilitator, removing the barriers that prevent the immune system from mounting a full-fledged attack against cancer cells. And this approach has far-reaching implications. Imagine harnessing this power not just against one specific type of cancer, but against a wide range of cancers, potentially even those that haven't responded to traditional treatments.
Now we're really getting into some exciting territory. It's like shifting the entire paradigm of cancer treatment, moving away from those broad stroke approaches like chemo and radiation towards these incredibly targeted immune-based therapies.
It is a paradigm shift, and a very promising one at that. And as research progresses, we're uncovering even more ways to leverage this approach. For example, there's growing interest in combining tesnatilimab with other cancer therapies, like checkpoint inhibitors, to create even more powerful treatment strategies.
Checkpoint inhibitors. Those are the drugs that basically release the brakes on the immune system, right?
Yeah.
Allowing it to go full throttle against cancer cells. So are you saying that combining these with tesnatilimab could create this kind of 1-2 punch? First, unleashing the immune system and then making sure it can effectively target those cancer cells.
Precisely. The idea is to create a synergistic effect where the checkpoint inhibitor ramps up the immune response. And tesnatilimab ensures those immune cells can zero in on the cancer cells without being fooled by the "don't eat me" signal. And early research suggests this combination approach has real potential, particularly in certain types of lymphoma and lung cancer.
Okay, I have to admit, this is blowing my mind a little bit. We've come a long way from simply trying to poison cancer cells with chemo to essentially turning the body into a highly sophisticated self-guided missile system.
It is a testament to the ingenuity of researchers and the remarkable progress being made in the field of immunotherapy. We're moving towards a future where cancer treatment is less about brute force and more about finesse, harnessing the incredible power of the human body to heal itself.
I'm completely with you on that. Now, before we get too carried away with all this exciting research, we did touch on something earlier that I think is important to circle back to. Biosimilars. We talked about how they could potentially make this treatment more accessible. But what exactly are they, and why are these such a big deal?
Biosimilars are essentially highly similar versions of biologic drugs like tesnatilimab. They're not exact copies, but they're designed to have the same safety and effectiveness profile as the original drug.
Okay, so kind of like the generic versions of those prescription drugs we see advertised on TV. Same effect, but potentially a lot more affordable.
You've got the right idea. But biologics like tesnatilimab are a bit more complex than your typical small molecule drug. They're large, intricate molecules made from living organisms, which makes their production and approval process a bit more involved.
So it's not just a matter of copying a simple chemical formula. There's a lot more nuance involved.
Exactly. But that's what makes the development of biosimilars so exciting. It's cutting-edge science that could have a huge impact on patient access to these life-saving treatments. Imagine a future where breakthrough therapies like tesnatilimab are no longer restricted by high costs, making them available to everyone who needs them.
Okay, now that's a future I can get behind, but I'm guessing it's not quite as simple as just whipping up a batch of biosimilars and making them available to everyone. What are some of the challenges and complexities involved in bringing these to market?
You're right, it's not a simple process. Developing and improving biosimilars involves rigorous testing and regulatory hurdles. But the potential benefits, both in terms of cost reduction and increased access, make it an endeavor worth pursuing. And that's where we'll pick up after a quick break, delving into the intricacies of biosimilar development and what it could mean for the future of tesnatilimab and cancer treatment as a whole.
All right, so we've established that biosimilars are basically like generic versions of complex biologic drugs like tesnatilimab. But you mentioned there are some hurdles when it comes to developing and approving them. What makes biosimilars so tricky?
Well, imagine trying to recreate a delicate souffle. Even if you follow the recipe precisely, slight variations in ingredients or oven temperature can lead to a very different outcome. Biologics like tesnatilimab are incredibly complex molecules, and even minor differences in their structure can impact their safety and effectiveness.
So it's not as simple as just copying the chemical formula. You're dealing with living organisms and intricate biological processes.
Precisely. And that's why the development of biosimilars is such a meticulous process that involves rigorous testing and stringent regulatory oversight. Researchers have to demonstrate that the biosimilar is highly similar to the original biologic in terms of its structure, function, and clinical performance.
It sounds like a pretty tall order. What are some of the specific challenges that researchers face in developing these biosimilars?
One of the biggest challenges is ensuring that the biosimilar has the same mechanism of action as the original biologic. Remember, tesnatilimab works by binding to CD47 on cancer cells. The biosimilar needs to bind in the same way with the same affinity to effectively block that "don't eat me" signal.
So they're not just looking at the overall structure of the molecule, they're also making sure it behaves in the same way, interacting with the target protein in the same manner.
Exactly. And it doesn't stop there. Researchers also have to demonstrate that the biosimilar has a comparable safety profile to the original biologic. This involves extensive clinical trials to evaluate any potential side effects and ensure that the biosimilar is well tolerated by patients.
It's all about striking that delicate balance between ensuring efficacy and minimizing any potential risks. But it sounds like all this testing and regulatory scrutiny could significantly slow down the process of bringing biosimilars to market.
That's true. The approval process for biosimilars is quite rigorous, and rightfully so. We're dealing with potentially life-saving treatments, and patient safety is paramount. But the payoff can be huge. Once approved, biosimilars can offer a more affordable alternative to expensive biologic drugs, making these cutting-edge therapies accessible to a much wider population.
And that increased access can have a ripple effect, right? Leading to more research, potentially faster development of new treatments, and ultimately better outcomes for patients.
Absolutely. With more affordable options available, researchers can conduct more clinical trials, explore new applications for existing treatments, and potentially even discover novel therapeutic combinations that could revolutionize cancer care.
Okay, so biosimilars have the potential to be a real game changer in the fight against cancer. But what does all this mean for someone listening right now, someone who might be facing a cancer diagnosis or knows someone who is? What's the key takeaway message here?
The key takeaway is this. The future of cancer treatment is evolving rapidly. We're moving away from one-size-fits-all approaches and toward more personalized, targeted therapies like tesnatilimab. And with the emergence of biosimilars, these groundbreaking treatments are becoming more accessible and affordable, offering a new beacon of hope for patients and their families.
So while the research is still ongoing and there are still hurdles to overcome, there's a lot to be optimistic about. It feels like we're on the cusp of a new era in cancer treatment, one where these innovative therapies become the standard of care available to everyone who needs them.
I share your optimism. And while tesnatilimab and biosimilars represent a significant leap forward, the journey doesn't end here. This deep dive has only scratched the surface of the incredible research being conducted in the field of immunotherapy.
That's what's so exciting about this field. It feels like we're only just beginning to understand the incredible potential of harnessing the power of the immune system to fight cancer. Who knows what other groundbreaking discoveries are just around the corner?
Exactly. And that's a question we should all be asking. What other "don't eat me" signals might cancer cells be using, and how can we outsmart them? The quest for a cure continues, and the possibilities are truly endless.
Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of tesnatilimab. It's been an incredible journey, and I hope you found it as fascinating and informative as I have.
It's always a pleasure to delve into these cutting-edge topics and explore the potential they hold for transforming human health.
And until next time, keep those minds curious, stay informed, and remember to keep diving deep into the world of knowledge.